maybe that's going to happen. I saw them doing the pledge, but I can't hear it.
Can you hear us now?
Yes, now we can.
All right. Thanks, Lisa. Okay. Citizens be heard. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak during the citizens to be heard portion? Okay, we'll move on right to department head updates. And we have Nathaniel here to talk about the victim advocate program and how the good work that you've done, and to introduce his new staff. If you guys recall at our last meeting, Nathaniel was letting us know how hard he works, and having an extra staff would be really helpful. And here we go. And so he's going to introduce her to you all.
How's everyone this evening?
Great.
You can hear me okay?
Yep.
Remember last time I was having some problems with the microphone, so hopefully this will be a little bit better. Well, so like Joette said, at the last meeting, I was really just kind of explaining a little bit about the program and kind of sharing what I'd learned about it and where I was at. And one of the biggest things that really emerged very quickly, and something that I was kind of surprised by, was just what the workload was. And you know, you guys asked what I needed for support, and I said that frankly what I actually needed was just another body in the program. And you were all very supportive, and that's always very common with these kind of programs, but support doesn't cost anything. And so I was really very incredibly surprised and very overjoyed when, like 3 weeks later, the city had put together a job announcement and was taking applications, and about 3 or 4 months after that, converting the part-time position to full-time. And I've just been really amazed at how quickly this process has gone. So I'd like to introduce Emily. She's our second advocate, so I can no longer say that I'm the only advocate for Moab City and Grand County, which is also a pretty wonderful thing to have to get used to saying. I kind of popped this on her at the last minute, so I don't want to put her on the spot too much.
All right.
But I wanted to make sure she had a chance to introduce herself.
Yeah, good to meet those of you that I haven't. It's been great since I started. I'm just really grateful that it was able to be made full-time. Also, everyone we run into is just always saying, like, thank God Nathaniel has help. So I'm glad I'm here too. Yeah.
That became the running joke for the first like month and a half that she was working here, is that almost verbatim every single person that we met said the same kind of thing, that they were just so happy to see somebody else in the program. So yeah, I'm pretty thrilled. It's hard to contain how happy I am about that, actually. One of the questions that came up last time at the meeting was what we would do if we had 2 simultaneous calls. And that happened just 2 weeks ago. We had a domestic violence call that Moab City police officers were responding to, and a medical emergency that unfortunately resulted in a fatality that the sheriff's deputies were responding to. And both calls came in within about 15 minutes of each other. So one of us responded one call, the other responded to the other one, and having the 2 people was pretty fantastic. I don't have as many updates this time around. I figured I'd keep this a little bit shorter and sweeter. The big thing that's coming up in the program, and I think is going to be very exciting, is that we are actually moving off of Victims of Crime Act grant funding. What was forecasted coming up for this next 2-year grant cycle starting this summer was that the Victims of Crime Act, the VOCA grant, was looking at potentially as much as a 40% cut pretty much across the board. So Utah State was the state government was kind of looking at what the potential impacts of that would be on programs within the state. And they decided to move certain select programs entirely to state funding to try to ease the burden on the VOCA grant for the programs that are still drawing off of it. So what they did, they tried to spread it around through all the different counties, both rural and more developed. And our program was one of the ones selected to be moved entirely to the state funding. So as it works now, it's a complete replacement for the grant funding. So the city and county will still be paying their components of it. But the state now pays for the entire amount that would be coming from the federal grant. We don't actually have a whole lot of details about what that'll look like yet. I think that we will still probably operate under VOCA standards in terms of policies and confidentiality and things like that. That kind of represents best practices and standards. So especially until we hear otherwise, that's how we're going to continue to operate. But it's going to be really beneficial, I think, because the reporting requirements and administrative duties for the state funding is dramatically lower than what's required for the federal grant. Even just the process of applying for it. I had already applied for it without realizing that I had completed the process. It was so much easier. So that was pretty refreshing. So that will start with the beginning of this coming fiscal year. And so we'll hopefully be getting more information about that coming up. I think that's really the biggest update right there. You know, one of the questions I put out an email to everybody asking for questions, and one of the questions that came up, which kind of echoes something that people were asking last time, was about maintaining our own well-being in this work, because we're exposed to a lot of secondary trauma and we have a lot of direct exposure to, well, pretty awful stuff. Nobody comes into our office because they had a great time at the bar and met the most wonderful person. You know, that's just not how we interface with the public. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about our own well-being and how to maintain that. And I don't know that we have an answer yet for sure about how you maintain well-being in those situations. But what I would say is that a lot of organizations treat employee well-being as sort of a secondary thing that specifically you do outside of work hours. They're very good at advocating, a lot of organizations, for well-being, again, as long as it's, you know, after 5 p.m. And what we're trying to do is make sure that it's a part of our day-to-day life. If you're only approaching your mental health as a response to a traumatic incident, you're probably not treating it the right way. So we try to check in with each other throughout the day. We also have a really good relationship with folks over at Seek Haven, as we have in the past. So we have a lot of peer support over there. And I think that helps a lot. And we're just taking it very, very seriously, knowing the kinds of things that we're exposed to in our job. Something else that's going on in the county right now, I know EMS is working on a peer support program, and we're kind of outliers. We're sort of in the middle between the world of like advocacy and social work and like first responders and public safety officers. We don't quite, Emily and I, we don't quite fit in either one of those two categories, but we're a little bit closer to police and fire and EMS just because we work within law enforcement systems. So we've been a little bit involved in the peer support program with EMS. I don't know what that'll turn into for us specifically, but we're trying to stay connected to that. That was really about the only question, other than introducing Emily, that came up, but hopefully we still have a moment or two. Do any of you have any other questions, anything that you want to bring up?
Do you have a last name, Emily?
It's
okay
Emily.
if you just go by
Emily Weiser. I'm sorry. You missed it. Yeah.
That's okay. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Luke?
Just had a question about the state funding. Is this kind of like the state of Utah stepping in and offering supplemental funds until VOCA potentially refills its coffers, or like, do we know the time frame as to like how long the state funds are available for?
Nobody said anything specific, but it sounds like they want to make it a permanent replacement for the VOCA funding. I sure hope so. I mean, it would be kind of a bummer if we had a couple of years of state funding with the lower administrative burdens and then had to go back to VOCA. I mean, ideally, at some point, the city and county will be able to take on the program entirely, right? A lot of these grants should be seen as more of a way to start the program like this. And Jason, I mean, you pointed this out last time. It's very vulnerable relying on grant funding. You know, it creates a huge hole that can be catastrophic if there's a problem with the funding. So the state funding will hopefully be long-term. Haven't had a whole lot of details about it yet. And that, you know, the transition is coming up in just a couple of days. So hopefully we'll be getting more guidance about it.
I guess I have another question, and that's just obviously it helps that there are two of you full-time now, but I imagine you know, this is work where it's probably kind of endless. So are you guys still feeling utterly overwhelmed, or is it a bit more manageable now? Just so we have a sense. I know, you know, some things got worse during the pandemic. So yeah, you know, if there were any trends we should be aware of, or yeah.
You know, I feel like overall it's definitely getting more manageable. Emily, do you have
Yeah, I know it's better than it was for sure. Daniel's been out a bit lately with a family emergency, and I've been acting on my own for a little while here and there. And those days I sometimes call him like, I don't know how you did this on your own for a year. Like it does get overwhelming, but it's definitely with two people, it's possible to split things literally. We have talked about maybe like a third part-timer or like volunteers was an idea with the VOCA grant especially, but overall it's manageable. I know it's much better than it was. And we make it work day to day, like Nathaniel was saying, with just checking in with each other every day and taking care of ourselves.
Thanks. I'm glad you guys are hooked up with EMS too. So thanks.
I mean, it's a huge partnership for sure. I would definitely say that it's very manageable with two people. I mean, you never want to say no to more help, but having a second full-time person has been pretty revolutionary in terms of what we can handle and respond to. It also, I mean, it adds to the longevity of the program. You know, I don't know how long I would have been able to survive as a single person in the program. So hopefully it'll keep us both around longer too.
And how long have you been on for, Emily?
It's been about 5 months.
Okay.
So I'm, just getting comfortable by now.
Any other questions?
Nope, I just want to thank you guys for doing what you do.
Mm.
It's one of those almost thankless jobs, but I think when you succeed, then there's some deep satisfaction there too.
It's very rewarding work.
Good.
It feels like a real privilege to be able to support people going through victimizations. One last thought that I wanted to share. One of the questions that came up from the city council beforehand was what I might say to the community to provide help and support to victims of crime. And I was kind of thinking over that. And what I would say is that when people are going through a traumatic incident or they've been hurt or abused or victimized, you're not alone. Going through something like that is very isolating. It makes you feel very alone. Sometimes part of abuse is deliberate isolation, and that's by design. But you don't have to be alone. There's a lot of help available. There are many resources, and I would just urge anybody experiencing any kind of victimization or abuse of any kind, when you're ready, when you feel like the time is right for you, reach out. Make that phone call, call Seahaven or the Multicultural Center, or call the police, or contact a teacher or a therapist or a church leader. Reach out to somebody for support and help, because you don't have to be alone. And when you're ready to take that step, there's absolutely help available within the county.
Great. Thanks. We are incredibly lucky to have both of you working in this challenging position, and we very much appreciate what you do. And I'm sure the community does too. It's hard work, and we're just so fortunate to have you two in these positions. So glad you're here, Emily. Glad you're here, Nathaniel. So let's. Would you mind coming up, Lex?
Yeah, come on up. We'll put him in the hot seat. This is great. No, man.
Yeah, all right.
I'll stand up.
These two don't know yet,
Yeah.
but I recently received a grant, and with that grant, I was able to purchase two programs, but one of the programs is through Lexipol called Cortico, which is an application that'll go on everybody's phone with direct links to services for all of the law enforcement, like Moab City Police Department, civilians, everybody that's involved. Part of that is we contracted with the Partridge Group for annual treatment. They will do a pre-screening for PTSD. They will do some baseline testing, free counseling, and then checkups throughout the year to just make sure that everybody, most of all these guys, that they're staying online and checking for different things that they may need to have addressed or what they're thinking about. But that should be going live in the next month. So we'll have Partridge Group actually come down here, and it's actually like a 3-hour intake test where they just completely do a full baseline, psychological evaluation. That's not to say whether or not you have issues, but it's to get us a baseline and then see how they can help from there. So
That's great.
they didn't know that that's live. I just got the grant a couple of weeks ago and have made all these arrangements, but that'll be going live here really soon. So they do have a place to go for help, and it's going to actually be on their phone, one phone call away, and it's all private. And we can
Great.
talk more about that too in the future.
That's wonderful. It's good.
That'll be great. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
That's fine.
Next up, we have Obi to talk about the water quality report.
Yeah, everybody should have gotten that in the mail. I just hand one out so you guys can kind of follow along. Yeah, so I was asked here to go over this year's water quality report, which all of the verbiage and the written stuff is all the same as last year, except for the new logo and some awesome pictures that the admin took, Jamie Hulsey. And so we can just move right to the little chart, and we can work through that real quick. So the city does a lot of tests on its water system to make sure it's safe. Most of them are state mandated. And so some are on sources, some are at the end of the system, and some are inside of the system, depending on what the contaminant is and where the risk is. Starting at the top, total chloroform, we do 8 of these a month. We didn't fail any of them this year. So the next one down, fecal chloroform, that's a triggered test. So if we fail a total chloroform, then we have to go and take a fecal chloroform and an E. coli. We didn't actually take any of those this year because we passed all of our total chloroform tests. Chromium, that's a metal. All of these are very low, so I should preface it with that. Copper, we did that test. We take that test every 3 years. We did that in 2022, where our copper levels are pretty low. Fluoride, so that's just natural runoff. We don't add fluoride to the water. It's just what's in the water. Lead is something that does concern us. We're spending some time now trying to survey for different lead components that are in our water system and try to get those removed. But that being said, we've never had a lead test over the allowable limit. And so lead is one that there's no low limit. The target is always 0. No amount of lead is good, but we've never been over what's called the allowable limit, which is where the triggers action from the state. Nitrate, from fertilizers, again, very low levels of nitrate. Selenium, sodium sulfate, these are all natural deposits. TDS is just like your solids, just like a kind of an addition of everything in there. If you just took out all the water, that's what's left is your total dissolved solids. The balance of everything you're seeing in there, the solids would be like calcium. And then chlorine at the bottom, we add chlorine so that the water is, there's a level of protection downstream of our, where we put the water into the distribution system. So that our water is safe to drink right out of the ground, but once you put it into a distribution system and it goes miles and miles in these pipes, it can build up bacteria, and so the chlorine gives us a safety factor. We run about 3.3 parts per million. On here it's in parts per billion. The state requires us to carry 0.2, so we're pretty low. We're not allowed to have 4,000 on here parts per billion. Yeah, and so overall, the system's looking good. You guys have any questions?
Questions for Obi?
Question. Do you see when you're pulling samples from different parts of town, do you see different particulates or contaminants? I'm wondering the older parts of town, do you see lead, or copper, in the new builds?
So
new areas you go.
So lead and copper are taken together, and those are actually taken specifically at sites that are high risk for lead and copper. So these numbers that you're seeing are going to be the worst that we have. So new places, new subdivisions with PVC mains and poly services, there's going to be really no lead risk. But a lot of the lead risk for these are in the house. So these tests are actually taken inside the home. And so we're actually testing the plumbing in the home as well. One of the risks is leaded solder. So a lot of older homes have that.
Okay.
And then as far as particulate, we get particulate all over town, depending on if we have breaks and turning water on and off, we'll stir it up, or we can get air trapped in there, which will make it appear milky when it comes out of the tap. We had lots of complaints about that last year with the with the water line project.
Anybody else? Questions for Obi? Kaylin?
Do you, so we get these every year, I think, and so it lists the values and they're always like very safe. But do you track them over time as well?
Yeah. Yeah, for this, I went back and looked at them and we're really pretty flat. Like there's nothing is ticking up in any way that I saw. And this is actually not like we have a very large amount of, this is just some of the things we're tracking. Like there's many more, like so pesticides, we track at least 50 pesticides, right? And they're all non-detect, so they don't need to go on here. VOCs are the same way, a lot of other things. And yeah, no, everything's pretty, that I've seen, pretty flat, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the results are fairly low the last several years. There hasn't been any significant rise in any of those numbers. Okay, I'm glad to hear that, and also about the other things that you're tracking.
What's that?
Oh, glad to hear that, and also that these other potential contaminants that are.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Questions? Great,
All right.
thank you.
Thanks.
We're also very lucky to have such good water in
Yeah.
our community.
Yeah, that's
That's-
true.
It's a lot, I just have one question for you. So some of this stuff, is it just natural in the water?
Yeah.
It's just like, it's coming through, I mean, coming through the rock and then, coming out of the sandstone or whether ended up in our water.
Yeah,
system?
so our sources are all groundwater, right? So
Right.
we have really good water. We're not treating it other than adding chlorine to it. We pump it out of the ground, add chlorine, and our water is pretty spectacular
Mhm.
compared to places that are on surface water where there's a lot more contaminants to take out and a lot more risk of contaminants getting into it. But a lot of this stuff, like it's just, dissolved in there from it percolating through all those layers.
No, that's right.
But they're at low enough levels that it's really pretty safe.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, moving on, we have two items on our consent agenda. Item 4.1, approval of the June 13th, 2023 regular meeting minutes and approval of the bills against the city of Moab in the amount of $1,267,622.24. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Kalen, second,
I'll second.
seconded by Ronnie. Any discussion, Kalen?
No.
Ronnie?
No, I said a few things to Summer. She took care of them right away. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, I'll call for the question. All in favor of consent agenda 4.1 and 4.2?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Now we move on to general business. Our first item is a consideration of adoption of resolution 22, 2023. A resolution approving a lot line adjustment of property located at 430 and 436 Ute Circle Drive, Moab, Utah, 84532. Corey, I believe this is just a kind of a correction to a lot line. Is that how I read it? Or I'm never correct on some of these things, seems like.
You've nailed it. That's
Okay.
that's correct. It's a historic fence line property that
Right.
two adjacent property owners are mutually agreeing to just realign that property line. So very simple action on our part.
Questions for Corey? Motion?
I move to approve Moab City Resolution 22-2023, a resolution approving the lot line adjustment of property located at 430 and 436 Ute Circle, Moab, Utah, 84532.
Wow, that's good. Second.
I'll second.
All right, motion by Kalen, second by Tawny. Any discussion, Kalen?
No.
Tawny?
No.
Anybody else? Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. All right, now for our most exciting agenda item tonight. We have Russ Von Koch and Noel, how do you say her last name? Janu. Really pretty name. Russ is the chair of the future site committee that Ronnie and I have been reporting on over the last year. And Noel is the Vista for the planning department at the county. And both of these guys work very closely with the community to come up with a plan for the future site of project. And they're going to make a presentation and then we have a resolution for you guys to consider. I don't know, Ronnie and I will kind of tag team on this. If we have questions, if there's things that you want to hear about, we can get more specific.
I think we lost Summer at the wrong time because I'm trying to get into the Zoom meeting.
Oh. Where'd she go? I didn't even see her leave.
Can you see there if you can just let me in?
Is it just because it's not?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Russ, would you mind sitting here so we can get you on the mic?
I would further introduce Noel as being the technical wizardry behind all of our
Yeah.
operation for this project.
If it's not one thing, it's another.
Hang on, I'll let you in. To be in.
All right.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, you're all good.
So we have the slideshow presentation. There's also a document that goes with that. We'll probably include that with the resolution so that we have that on record. But that gets into the real specifics of the details of this plan. Tonight, we're just gonna really kind of briefly let you guys know what the process was, show you the map, and then get any feedback from you on the process and what we're coming up with.
Okay, can you hear me? All right, thank you. Well, this first slide shows a view looking over the Umptra site and the river and right into Moab Valley. It is designated as part of the North Moab Gateway Plan, which was jointly approved by Grand County and Moab City as a special planning area. And the work that we're doing on this committee is an early work towards that goal of having a full plan. Eventually, we're doing the vision part now, and that means that we'll eventually, if everything goes well and the property acquisition by the city county happens, then that would lead to the engineering design and all that favor. But right now we're like, what is the vision for the use of this area? So go on to the next slide. We had a large committee. A number of these people listed all helped at different times. They were the backup person from the city or county, that sort of thing. So we had 6 county people, 2 city people, 3 land agency people, Park Service, BLM, and state sovereign lands, and 3 citizen volunteers. The other 2 besides myself were Stacks and Sharp and Norm Boyd. So next slide. Why are we doing it now? Well, because back in 2013, when this was first approved by the city and county, the resolution had to do a 5-year update. And so we're now, we did it in 2018. Now this will be the 3rd time for approving this. It's likely, I think, that we'll have at least one more. We have, if all goes well with the DOE and the project, they have around 3 million more tons estimated tailings to move. They're moving about 1 million tons a year. So there's more or less 3 years there. And it's going to take several years for further work, revegetation, demobilization, all those kinds of things. Before they'll really be done, site completion report approved and all that. So there's probably time for one more. All right. And so why are we doing this? Well, opportunity for community input. We've done a lot of work in the past on listing the facilities that we would have this and kind of placing them in logical locations. So we're updating that. Refining site guidance, and that includes such things as working with the highway department, all the environmental conservation factors that would be incorporated into it, making sure that we maintain existing right of ways that are so important for the community, all those kinds of things. Solar energy from rooftop solar primarily. So those sorts of things in the site guidance. And then it's also very important, as Joette and the crew going back to Washington the year after year have been bringing the money for the DOE to get this project going. And that's what that's tremendous acceleration as a result of those lobbying efforts. And so this document, I think the team will admit going to Washington is something that's valuable to show to the congressionals and say, okay, you know, here's what we're doing, what we're about. This is important to the community. We're keeping on track, and this is what we want to do.
Yeah, and it's also to try to show the feds that we want this, we're working really hard. We want this property to be owned by the city and the county, one or the other, or both. And so by doing this, we're just kind of emphasizing how important that is to our community.
Okay, go on to the next slide. Okay, back in last July, at the end of the month, our parent committee, the Moab Tailings Project Steering Committee, reinitiated by a motion to get the site future subcommittee going again. And so that was a couple months of getting work organized and putting all the committee together. We started in October, started planning initially an open house, all the public involvement around that. Joette and I and others did worked at news releases and radio interviews, and we had this open house in November, well attended, right in this room, engaged group of people, about what, 25, something like that. And they stayed the whole 2 hours.
We did have pizza.
We did. That helps.
That helps.
So I think the city picked that up. So thanks for Moab City on that. So then after the open house that kicked off the comment period, that went through the end of January. So we had over a 2-month comment period on this. And then the next work was to analyze, do content analysis, summarize all those comments, evaluate them for changes that they might make, think about changes in the committee that had members had in mind of their perceptions of the needs for community as well as the public comment. And that went February into the very end of April. And we then presented to the steering committee, and resolution was approved by that group to move forward with a recommendation to the Grant County and Moab City. And that's why we're here tonight following that. And so we've already had the county approve earlier this month, and now doing the presentation to the city. Okay. We spent some time in February working on mission and vision statements. Vision is pretty straightforward, just to conduct this planning process to develop a community vision for the potential future use of the site. We always use that wording because we don't know for sure that this property will ever be transferred. So not to ruffle any feathers with the Department of Energy. Say, okay, if you guys are willing to give it to us, we will want it. So, and then the vision, pretty obvious in there too, what we're doing, that the county and city together acquire the property, develop it, and then manage the former mill site for a whole range of community benefits that we think that this property and its development through this vision would bring to the Moab County and Moab City and Grant County. So
one thing for you all to keep in mind too is that, and Russ and Noel will go into this with principals, but the Department of Energy legacy management is gonna, once the site is clear, no matter what happens, Department of Energy's legacy management division will be on site monitoring it for probably the next 80 to 100 years.
Forever is the law.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah, 80 to 100 years. Anyway, so just so you know that even though it's going to be cleaned up, they're still going to be there to make sure that, because there's still going to be contamination there, and they're going to be monitoring that.
So an example for there's excavation for a building foundation or something like that, they could be available to do analysis of the soils and that sort of thing. Right. So, okay. So we also developed 10 principles for design and implementation. Number 1, to collaborate with the DOE Office of Environmental Management, the people we've been working with for a long time, we're actively doing the cleanup. Second, to work in partnership with the Office of Legacy Management, because we are going to be working with them for a long, long time. And they have a lot of experience. They've managed multiple properties that have already been transferred into private use or specific purposes, that sort of thing. And so they're very great source of information about what's possible in the future. We need to plan, the principle is this based on the community vision, of course, and needs. Prioritize health and safety for the public, very important. And money's always important. So short-term and long-term sources of funding to develop those so that the wherewithal to develop the vision is going to be there. And sound planning, phased multi-year implementation. It's not going to happen all at once. Once the property is acquired, assuming that happens, things like developing the trail system, getting immediate public benefits out that can be done in a very pretty low cost way, and get public to understand something's happening to this site. It's now available for your use. So then on through the more complex as funding becomes available, designs are completed. Incorporate environmental sustainability, energy conservation, emphasize resource conservation. And I mentioned the rights of way already. We need to work with our right of way holders and make sure that everything that's done is compatible with those, because we need our power and gas and fiber optics and all that stuff. Okay, there we go. And now I'll turn it over to Noel to talk about this survey.
Yeah, and sorry, Summer, would you be able to just move the video? Is that possible? It won't really let me do a whole lot with it.
Can you move the three? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, just like the 3 videos that we can see part of the screen. If you click just the little line at the top of the Zoom. Yes, I'm aware I'm trying to run it over here. Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, it's okay if not. That's better. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so just wanted to talk a little bit about our public engagement process through this whole thing, because it is the community's vision. And we started off with an open house, as Russ mentioned, in November. We had 20, 30 people come, and we had big poster boards with the previous plan's map up for people to make comments on. They used little sticky notes and they said, oh, I like this thing, I didn't like this thing, what if we had this here instead? And so we took all of that information and processed it, but we also had a survey that people filled out on paper at the event, but we also put it online on the county's public engagement portal called Grand County Connects. And that had massive success. We had 179 people respond over the 2-month public comment period. And you can see the responses to the quantitative questions here. And this is where we ranked all of the uses proposed in the last plan. We asked people to rank like from 1 to 5, 5 being like the most favorable, how people felt about using this space for these purposes. So you can see here the biggest ones are event center, trails, boat ramp, transit center, view areas. And then you kind of get down into like a wishy-washy area where there's an equal amount of people who love it and an equal amount of people who hate it. For performance and convention center, play and exercise areas, you can kind of read through the list. And then at the very bottom, we have our food service, our federal resource agency offices, food court, inland beach, artist studio village, and those really were not supported in the quantitative questions, but then also in the qualitative questions where we asked folks, are there any uses here that you think aren't needed? Like, have the needs of the community changed since the last plan? We also asked people if there were any uses that weren't listed that we need now. And so, of course, there was a lot of pickleball and other things, but just say, yeah, so as I had said, strong support for those listed at the top and very little at those at the bottom. And the general ethos was really resident-friendly uses, less so catering for visitors and tourists. But there was one question that was asking like, what in one sentence, what's your vision for this? And it was just overwhelmingly like a place for locals to go and hang out and walk the dogs and things like that. And more than the last update to this vision, a lot of emphasis on reducing water use and environmental impacts and increased sustainability, which is really cool to see. So yeah, some of the changes that we added a splash pad and pickleball courts to our map. We'll show the map afterwards. We have riverside view spots, which are along our trail network, just little spots that we can have informational things about the landscape and the environment.
They just sit there to hang out,
Yeah.
watch the river.
Yeah. And we have a food truck area that would just be like a parking area for the food trucks as opposed to building established food buildings for food vending and that sort of thing. And then there's some short-term consideration of using the existing DOE buildings as temporary local government offices, and then potentially into the future as part of our phased implementation, designated that area as a technical or scientific business campus, kind of similar to in Grand Junction, their similar mill site. They've turned part of the area into a business campus of sorts for outdoor rec businesses and manufacturing. We also modified some things from really large play areas with a lot of grass into small play or exercise areas that'll also involve like maybe body weight lifting machines and things like that. There's also, there was talk of having a reflection pool and ice rink that we've turned more into a sports court, like a tennis court of sorts that could be flooded with a little bit of water in the winter to turn into an ice rink. So just being more conscious of water use. And then we did away with federal office space, an indoor performance and convention center, and then the Artist Village food court in Inland Beach. And really overwhelmingly was support for an outdoor event center in the form of an amphitheater similar to the one in Grand Junction. There's a little bit of confusion between indoor performance center and convention center and outdoor event center, but really everyone wants an amphitheater, was kind of what we took away from this. So this is the map. I'll let Russ take it away and walk through this.
Okay, do a little tour here. Let's see, probably just do it with the pointer. Can you do that?
I can see my mouse.
Okay, all right, so the big picture here is we'll look at Swanee, the little black square. That's Swanee City Park for scale. The project area is about 480 acres, but a lot of that is not very subject to development. There's about 74% in that purplish speckled part. That's the riparian area along the river. We're looking just at trails, the little view spots, some exercise areas, little play areas, picnic tables, that sort of thing. That facilities that could withstand a flood and not entail an enormous cost to uncover that from the silt. And then there's about 6% that's the hillside areas. And a lot of that is covered in utilities. And that's, if you look and see the yellow areas along both highways, those are all utility rights of way for highways, railroads, and all the other types of utilities. And then there's about 20% that is in the developable category. So that it's in two areas. It constitutes a total of 119 acres, 95 on the left side, and 19 over where the DOE offices are in now. So that 95 is between Highway 279 and Bloody Mary Wash. So just kind of doing a high level tour around it just for location purposes to get a vision of it. And then kind of the upper left corner, that would be the transit center area. And there would be a welcome center with that. People, ideally people they would come in, we hope many people by public transit or by the trail system out to this area on the bike paths. And then they from their motels, camp parks and all that to reduce pressure on parking. And there would be a welcome center. People could find out where they could do what they could do when the next bus is coming. Hopefully how to pay for it. I believe in paid transit myself. And so that would be a key facility. It would probably grow slowly over time, back and forth to Moab, and then out to Arches, and then Canyon Lands, maybe for workers coming from Green River and Monticello, LaSalle, something like that. All the major transit. It work in conjunction with the Moab, with the Lions Park Transit Hub, as that would be a major stop in the transit system. Okay, then just south, there's a kind of a little speckly area. It's the Orientation Plaza. That's an area where people, if they're waiting for their bus or an event, would be able to learn about the history of the area, the sites in particular, Moab in general, and then also environmental education as well, and a series of exhibits that would lead from the transit center down to the event center. And I mentioned these are scaled to as far as we can to existing facilities. This one is models after the size and general configuration of the event center in Orem. And then to the left and down a little bit over is the community park area, and that it has different facilities, some of which Noel's already listed. I think pretty much all of them. Pickleball. There's a covered pavilion for multiple uses, the sports court, ice rink, a bigger picnic area. The food court area would be between the park and the event center. And then there's also a maintenance facility in that area. And then at the very southern end of the developed area is a potential sewerage facility. The upper left, the rail station. And then the major facility all around is the trail system. Is the green around. The full dark green is the existing portions of the Riverside Trail that the DOE has already developed, including benches and everything, all there, but it hasn't been able to be open to the public yet. The dashed green, that's a schematic of a potential route to complete the major multi-mile loop that would go around this. An idea that could be for a hard surface partially and soft surface on one side. So hard surface for bicycles and strollers and all that, and then a softer surface for running and exercise. Two major connectors into that system come from under existing Highway 191 underpasses that would connect the Moab Canyon bike path to this trail system. And then interior to the loop, there are a number of connecting trails. We're going to, people could get back and forth, logical different places within the area, and also learning and educational kind of trails along the river. So those are like little tiny blue dots. Those are the river view spots, and the exercise ones are the orange ones, and that sort of thing. So players, questions about the map? It's the products of this effort, this map, and a 30-page report that describes the process, the facilities, and the design guidelines that I developed.
Questions for Russ or Noel?
Sure. So would this be kind of a cooperative, kind of like Sandplatz? You know, like a bunch of different agencies,
Could be.
you know, kind of working. And then, are there other people, other federal agencies that are vying for this as well? Do we know?
We hope, we don't know. Right now, the process is it's a federal surplus property process. And so how that works is it's offered to a federal land agency or another federal agency. If they're not interested, then they go to the state. They're not interested, then they go to local. We kind of want to bypass that whole thing. We've had discussions with the Department of Energy. They talked about writing of some sort of MOU that would, they would give it to us as a deed restricted property. That would be the ideal. We've also talked about just getting congressional approval through our delegation, just have it tacked on to another bill that, you know, would allow it to come to us. So we're trying to work around the federal surplus property. And then that's not, you know, a bad thing. But if we can do that, I think that would be desirable. I can tell you that the BLM and MPS really are not interested in this. But and we haven't heard of any other agency. And we've also talked to the governor's office. The governor's office is very supportive of this property coming to the county, the city, or both entities. Your idea of a Sandplatz cooperative type situation is not a bad one. We just didn't get into that depth. We were just looking at what we would like to see here.
Yeah, clearly like something as an example would be the transit center. At the point when the property is acquired, if Arches Canyonlands, if they think that the transit system would benefit them at that time, it's a logical location. It's close to town. It's right outside of the park. It would work well for that kind of cooperative use. Along the Colorado River, state sovereign land, and they're very interested in co-management. They've had a member participate throughout this planning process for the whole 10 years that's been going, and so that's another example of a potential cooperation. BLM, of course, could benefit from transit, I think, as well. If people going back and going to their campgrounds and the bike trails up in Moy Brands, for example, and Highway 331, they could come to the transit center and get on a bus and go up there. It's just for, you know, individual day rides and that sort of thing, right back to town on the bike path. So.
And then as far as like parking lot is, I don't know if you figured it out with this, but like how many parking spots?
We have not done that. We're using parking areas that just that have been clipped from different GIS images to fill in the space. It kind of shows the alignment, and that there would be the parking for the transit center and the event center, and there would be an effort to have those managed in such a way that to have the people would mostly be using the parking for transit purposes, to going to the parks and that sort of thing during the main part of the day. And as the evenings would come, then that use could shift towards the event center use for parking, or there could be, the event center could also support any kind of other events that might be here, like running races and car shows, or any sort of event that would be potentially space to have it in the buildings. Could where the event center could even function as a registration for events.
Right.
Facility
No,
will be there.
I was just kind of curious because like if you have like this event center, it'd be nice to have it to be able to hold all the vehicles for an event. You know, I mean, you know that we're gonna have like T-Swift is like that. Parking.
That'll fill it up.
Well, I think, you know,
But-
all that detail is gonna come when we get to the point where we have the money to actually do all this.
Right.
You know, and then we'll get into, that's why we went through the Grand County Planning Commission, because right now it's a county-owned property, you know, it's in the county. They're the jurisdiction over the planning, and so it would have to go through that whole process as we bring some of these amenities online. We really are looking at you know, some of the stuff like the river viewing and the trail along the river, they're already there. It's just a matter of cleaning up the vegetation and putting a bench in. I mean, some of this stuff we can do fairly quickly, but the event center and the parking, that's going to be a big fundraising effort for another generation of people to have to deal with. Because-
The transit center can be a big key to that as well as the bike path.
Right, that's
People
what,
could,
yeah.
if they have specific shuttles that would be designed to go down Main Street and pick up people from the camp parks and the hotels to come on out right here and just get off, and you walk right over, very easy, and you go to the event, and then you come back and you have a whole series of buses.
But all those details will be worked out. when we
But
get
yeah, and
there.
I get
Yeah,
that. I was
so,
just,
yeah,
you know,
it's-
like,
but
feel
it's a
like
good-
the boat
it's a
ramp, it'd be
good-
great to have like
It's a good
planning for parking for the boat ramp, because
It's
Yeah.
a good question. That takes a parking engineering and
Yeah,
a specialized design, which we're doing this with mostly volunteers now.
Right.
So.
I think it's great. It's awesome.
An agency.
It's a lot of work went into this. Any other questions from council? Any, Ronnie?
Oh, I just wanted to thank these two and Noel too on behalf of Grand County because yeah, you guys really, I mean, every process has been great, but I was lucky enough to be involved in the 2018 one and this one. And Russ just brings so much expertise from time at the BLM, but community meetings. I just feel like you guys both times have done just a great job of trying to reach as many people as possible in the community for input, but then trying to make some sense of everything that came through. But I also just the quality of writing in the report. There's so much good information in there. And I also know that, yeah, the county definitely stepped up. I think they bought the pizza at that meeting. So,
Ronnie?
I have a good relationship with both bodies.
It's very-
But anyway, no, I just kind of have really appreciated that because not everybody can run that kind of community input process. So I do feel like it's a gift you guys bring. Thanks.
Saxon did a lot of.
Yes, and
co-chairs.
Saxon and yeah, Norm did so much great talking to people. Yeah.
And Russ used to be the liaison between the site and so he understands the whole DOE. So, you know, he's been an excellent chair and hopefully when you'll be here in 5 years when we do it again.
I'm getting older.
Yeah, I know, me too. I just want to emphasize, there's a resolution that I'm gonna ask you guys to consider. And there's some modifications to the resolution that's in your packet is a little different. It's nothing major, just kind of some edits that we changed that I'll be signing. But I also want to emphasize how important this type of visioning process is to memorialize what the community today and in 2013, 10 years ago, wanted here. We did that with the MAPS project and it's still, the city supported that. Those are the guidelines for that project. This is so important. I mean, it may seem, you know, like it's just a vision. It really holds for future bodies as ours and planning commissions and community members to really understand what we wanted to see at this site. And so I honestly never thought that we would be this close. You know, I thought we were going to be here for another 15 years and I wouldn't even be alive. But
We're gonna live longer than that.
I know, but I'm just saying, I mean, it's really important for us to go through this process so that we have this for future and for federal government agencies and the state to know how much work we put in, how much we want to see this process, site cleaned up so that we could use it for the betterment of our community.
Truly intergovernmental with some good citizen participation. The intergovernmental went right to the end when we were able to get Lisa Church to come in and do a professional edit of our document. So that was great too.
Yep,
Really
that was really
appreciated
good. Thanks, Lisa, for that. All right, I'm going to,
So is this the resolution?
this is the resolution.
Okay.
So you're going to consider the adoption of resolution 19/2023 as a resolution supporting the 2023 update to the community division for the future uses of the MOA Untra project site. And I will ask for a motion to that effect.
I will motion to that effect and I'll just, because you commented on it earlier, just add to my motion that I will propose, but I think you mentioned it earlier that we attached the
Yes,
30-page
yes.
document to the resolution.
Yep. I've got a motion by Ronnie,
A second.
second by Tani. Ronnie, any discussion? Tani? Nope. Anybody else? I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Yay. You guys are awesome. Thanks so much for all your work and looking forward to another 5 years. That'll be the end.
Maybe I'll be emeritus by that.
Thanks you guys so much for taking your time this evening. Really appreciate that. All right, now we move on to Carly's updates.
I have one thing for you.
Hey, council. Sorry I can't be with you there tonight due to a COVID exposure. I'm going to start off just by giving you a quick overview of some of the outstanding items that Ben had been assigned. And I think a couple of you had asked the mayor about where a few of these bigger projects were in the pipeline. And I can provide just quick information about some of them just so you have an idea. The first one is the Comprehensive Financial Sustainability Plan. This project has moved a lot slower than anticipated, mostly because of bandwidth. It's in process. The consultants are working on it. And as all of you know, we have a former city manager, David Everett, who's helping us out part-time with some project management, final reporting on the budget and the upcoming audit. This is one project he will be managing, he's managing. We haven't had an initial meeting, and we'll kick that back into gear with David on board. One item that Ben had in mind, as well as Marcy, is a banking services RFP. Right now we have banking through Wells Fargo, but we're going to pursue a competitive bid process to see if they're still our best option. This hasn't started yet, but Marcy's going to take the lead in writing the initial draft of it. David will review and support, and I'll oversee it. Transparency reporting. This has largely been consistent under Ben, although there are a couple of reporting that we're going to reinstate, I believe, quarterly starting in July. This needs to be revised. Once we have some reconciliation and update in Polaris, we will be reporting on the fiscal year 23 Q3 reporting for you. Marcy's helping out with that. She's been very eager to expand some responsibilities, and she's demonstrated a real ability to kind of dive in and pick up some of these tasks. Another kind of housekeeping items you don't have to worry about are like the single financial audit. This is related to federal funding, ARPA funding that we received, and we're just being audited on it. There's also state and local fiscal recovery funds reporting, kind of like an audit. That's COVID money that we unencumbered through a standard allowance, and we just have to report on it, and that's been taken care of. Let me see. And then these are just bigger ones. Ben was able to report the budget you just adopted for fiscal year 24 to the state. We're going to be loading that into Polaris and ClearGov. Thank you to Marcy and Danny and David for taking that on. Strategic planning will be completed by myself. I'll be working on it next week so we can have that final plan adopted by you on July 11th. That's the timeline for now. I know that ClearGov still has some functionality that I haven't checked to see is updated for their new program. Regardless, we should probably get it adopted, and if needed, we can make it a little bit more user-friendly and a little prettier. But since we've adopted the budget, it'd be great if our strategic plan was also adopted. Any questions on those items?
Questions? Nope.
Terrific. Okay, let me pull up my list. Luke, you had a question about Walnut Lane and where we are in that process. I know that they have been conducting a survey about like a needs assessment survey throughout the community. My understanding is they have some interesting findings that might have them revise their original proposal. I don't know the details of that information and what they've learned, but they'll be sharing it with us soon. And we're still just negotiating the pre-development agreement and the development agreement. So they have worked on a draft for the past couple of months. It's now in Nathan's hands, and he is going to start reviewing as well. Any questions? Did that answer your question, Luke? Any others who had it?
Yeah, no, that definitely helps. Although I did like literally just this past week receive feedback that a lot of community members were pretty dissatisfied with the survey that they had put out.
Oh, how so?
Part of it was just like the framing of the questions, I think made some assumptions, like they were targeting a specific cohort within our community. The general consensus that I got was like, it felt like it missed the point. But
I know that it was framed towards renters. They weren't interested in homeowners because they didn't see them as necessarily being the target demographic for the development. Is that what you were referring to, or?
I think there's something else to that as well. I can get more details from the people that I talked to and kind of pass that along, but.
Yeah. Interesting. We're happy to provide that feedback to them if they felt like there is information that they're missing. I have only heard that feedback about the renters, but I agree with that perception from Columbus Pacific.
Wait, Kaylin has a question.
Oh, sorry, Kaylin. You all are all so small.
So I've just wondered. So the way Columbus Pacific phrased it in their survey, it's that they were grateful to be awarded by the city of Moab the opportunity to develop. And my impression was that we just decided to direct staff to negotiate an agreement. And I can see that, like, it's interesting that they're doing the survey to inform this process, which is fine, but it was just an interesting phrasing. And so Nathan's reviewing the pre-development agreement, but are there like broad stroke terms of that we should also be reviewing in parallel?
I mean, so the agreement, of course, will be coming to the council for review. The council ultimately approves that pre-development agreement.
Right, but I'm just wondering like how fine of a comb is Nathan going through this versus like, are there broad elements of the agreement that the council might weigh in on?
So Nathan will be doing, I think, basically a legal review. It won't be necessarily policy based or making policy decisions. That will be done in conjunction with you as council. And it will be coming to, a draft will be circulated to all of you before it comes to a council meeting. Is that your question for input?
I think you want to have some input into the agreement.
Well, I guess I'm wondering what staff's impression of are you assuming that and this is okay, that you're going to negotiate something and then bring it to us as a more or less like done deal, or are there negotiation points that you want our feedback on? Because before we invest a lot in like legal review, are there like broad stroke terms of the agreement that we might review?
Yep.
The answer is the latter option. It won't be a done deal by the time it gets to you. There will be additional ample opportunity for council input. I think what Nathan is talking about are things like boilerplate things we need in the agreement. So I would say it's not pre-cooked by the time he gets here. It's going to be an iterative process.
Okay, good.
Do you have like a timeline, Carly?
Nope. I think it'd be great once Michael Black is on board, he'll probably take the lead for it.
Yep.
And it's interesting that I can see the perspective of the award. I mean, they are the selected consultant. There's no like a contract to award necessarily. It's not like we're giving them, money or a contract quite yet with that action. So you're right that they weren't awarded the contract, but they are the selected consultant to pursue an agreement.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. A reminder to local business owners, the deadline to renew your business license is this Friday, June 30th. The treasurer's office closes at noon on Friday. So please don't come in afternoon hoping you can renew your license because you will have missed the deadline. The 4th of July is coming up next week. So now is a good reminder about the rules about using fireworks in town. As a reminder, no open burning within city limits. So open burning of yard waste and any other debris is always prohibited in city limits. We have a burn ban. Personal fireworks are prohibited in the following areas within Moab city limits: parkways, public trails, and pedestrian paths in the city. City parks, except Center Street ball field. So the ball field is available for folks if they want to use that area for fireworks. Over or within 200 feet of Pat Creek or Mill Creek, within 20 feet of any residence, building, structure, or combustible material. There are fines attached to this behavior, so if you're caught, you will be fined. The following fireworks are also never allowed: fireworks that fly, that explode, or travel more than 6 feet off the ground, aerial and flash shells, Roman candles, comets and mortars, firecrackers, bottle and aerial rockets, and other similar explosives. If you observe people using these fireworks or breaking the rules, please feel free to call dispatch. The police department will be out looking for violators because this is a pretty serious public safety issue. We have had really good success with compliance in the past, so I appreciate the community taking the fire risk seriously.
I think you missed several different types of fireworks.
I don't know that I had them in names. I think hopefully I described them. I don't know. I don't have the glossary that Jason has available to him in a legal
Jason has
fireworks.
it. If we need it, we can refer to him.
Yeah.
He's our pyrotechnic expert.
The Moab Free Concert Series kicks off this Friday at 6 p.m. at Swanee Park. It's the first of 4 concerts that will be held this summer season at that venue. I hope everyone comes out. It's a great event. And some good news here. I'm happy to tell you that the MRAC has been awarded a gold rating from the Trust, which is our insurance provider. There are only a few pools in Utah that have this rating. It's based on safety, water chemistry, and lifeguarding skills. So congrats to employees like Annie McFay, Colby, Stacy, who run the pool so well and are making sure our staff down there are operating it well. And that leads me to kind of a sad announcement. I'm sorry to say that Annie McFay, our Parks, Rec, and Trails Director, is departing the city by the end of the week. She is moving to Missoula. Her last day in the office is this Friday. However, she's going to be working remotely and part-time for a number of months, especially to get some big initiatives through, such as the Parks Master Plan, this riparian RFP that we're also initiating for some flood restoration and follow-up. And she's just happy to be available if we have questions as we transition to a new Parks, Recs, and Trails Director. I'm really sad to see her go. She's been an absolute pleasure to work with. We've been lucky to have someone with her experience and expertise for the past couple of years. And that's all I've got.
Thanks, Carly. Moving on to council reports. We'll start with you, Tani.
I'm on Team Jason. I don't have anything this time. So the Housing Authority moved their meeting from last week to this coming Thursday. So
okay,
that's it.
Caitlin?
I too don't have anything, but I will point out for those of you that didn't notice, Grand County the commission is having a meeting tomorrow, and it looks like the big item is to approve an agreement with a consultant to develop an economic development plan. Significant component of which will be developing a sustainable tourism plan, which was a significant action item through our visioning process. And it looks like the recommended consultant is very qualified and has worked with some really high profiles, similar communities. So that's exciting to see the Economic Development Department moving forward with that.
Will we be a part of that process, the city, you think?
I just glanced at the proposal and it looks like there is going to be a stakeholder committee. And so hopefully,
good.
I'd encourage you and Carly to reach out to them, and
tomorrow maybe we can bring it up at our C4.
Yeah. Great.
Thanks, Caitlin. Luke.
Yeah, so I participated in a local homeless council meeting 2 weeks ago. It was our first in-person meeting since I've been a part of the group, and I appreciated all of the organizational representatives who came out, including Assistant Chief Bell. Thought it was like a really productive conversation about kind of our community-wide response to people dealing with housing issues in our community, and kind of trying to figure out how we can better support one another and work more collaboratively together to make more efficient use of our limited resources here. So hoping to keep that momentum going a little bit. And then I participated in the Planning Commission meeting last week. Planning Commission has moved forward with a positive recommendation for the landscaping ordinance code. So that should be coming to us pretty soon. Through the request of some community members and everything at that meeting, I also advocated for the addition of some verbiage that will require all new development to include water sense features internally. And that seemed to receive a positive recommendation from the Planning Commission as well. So it's a little bit of an addendum to a really, really great project that Lexi and Corey had put together. It's really thorough, really well presented and documented. But yeah, so that should be on our desks pretty soon. And then attended the kind of tour of the new emergency room in OR today at the hospital. The ER should be open as of 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. So trying to get some final like little bells and whistles going, but really excited to get that open and just kind of a bit more of a functioning hospital again. But that's it.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks for your advocacy for the internal conservation. Appreciate that a lot. That was good.
Yeah.
Ronnie.
I too do not have a ton. We had a Grand Water and Sewer Service Agency meeting on the 15th of June. I'm still getting to know this group, so I just kind of ask them once in a while what they do or don't want to hear about, so we don't waste time at the meetings. So I did inform them of the annexation we just approved. Staff knew about it, but the board members didn't. And I attended a Moab Irrigation Company meeting on the 21st of June to learn more about their role, along with Tricia Dean of the county. And other than that, I just did some little informational sessions with several of the candidates running from council who approached me with questions. That was it.
Great. Thank you, Ronnie. Jason.
I attended the chamber luncheon as the city liaison. It was good. Good speaker on internet security and data security, which was great. Good local company here that's doing that. And then I attended the Utah Outdoor Recreation Strategy Plan with the mayor and Carly, and also one of the county commissioners was there, and it was good because it was a lot of the government agencies and city officials from the Four Corners area or southeastern Utah area, from Price down to Bluff, just kind of discussing outdoor opportunities and what people kind of strategize, where outdoor recreation is going and where, funds could possibly be spent to optimize, those areas and kind of improve outdoor recreation pursuits, in these areas, such as, they talk about, walking trails, trails like in just these and kind of what they thought that user groups were looking for in the future. It was really good. So, and that was basically all I have.
Okay, thanks. I met with a gal named Laura Roethlisberger. She's no relation to Ben. I did ask. And if you don't know who Ben Roethlisberger is, he was former quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Anyway, she works with UServe and is just trying to get a senior companion foster grandparent program going here. She met with Jen Sadoff before me and then me, and that's something that Jen and I really would like to see happen. We do have 2 foster grandparents here now, so in October I'm going to have them come and we're going to give them an award for all their work that they've done. So more to come on that program. I attended a very brief long range transportation plan today with UDOT. Their long range plan is online. I don't know that if you did not receive the email, I'm happy to forward it to you. You can link to all the long range projects they have going from now for the next 30 years. And you can see which ones are prioritized, which ones are funded, and which ones are specific to Grand County. Let's see, I got a health annual report from the Southeast Utah Health Department. You guys got one too. So if you, they'll be in my office if you guys want to look at the report, please feel free to come and pick it up and read it. We have a C4 meeting tomorrow, which is the City County Collaboration Committee. Kaylin, myself, and Carly, Mallory, and Kevin Walker and Trish Hedden will be at that meeting. We're going to primarily be talking about the Water Resource Utility Management Plan and their future land use plan and how those two are going to be working together. We're also going to bring up the transit tax. You guys know we've talked about that, and it's something we want to talk to the county about. So we'll report back at our next meeting as to how, what the outcome that is and what we're going to do to work together. 4th of July parade is on Tuesday. I'm going to be in the parade. If any of you all are interested in being in the parade with me, let me know. You're welcome to ride along. I'm seeing a lot of enthusiasm here, but I will be there. And I think the police, the chief and you guys are all going to be there with the motorcycles and made a request. Okay, very good. Sounds good. So come to the parade and then there'll be fireworks that night. And then lastly, as you all know, I've been working on the policies and procedures for city council meetings. Thank you for your input. Lisa and I have been working really closely on that, and I think we are really close to a final document. What I'll do this week is send you out the red line version that Lisa and I came up with based on your comments and suggestions. And if you could get back to me with any questions, I'd like to have this on our July 11th meeting. So look for that this week. I think Lisa and I and Carly want to look at it one more time before we send it out to you, make sure that it's legally sound and what we thought we talked about. So that's it for me. And now we don't have an executive session, so I'm going to call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.